Biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized to the right.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
If we were in high school, I'd take you behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
I will go and take Trump out tonight.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
We can't just do rallies. We have to fight back. There will be casualties on both sides. There will be, because people have to die to make a change in this world.
Careful what you wish for, my dear.
Ladies and gentlemen, so we have the divorcee Sam Seder having a little hissy fit, a little bipolar fit over Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin, please give me attention. Dave Rubin, please legitimize me. Dave Rubin, Dave Rubin. And I can picture Stan and then 800th row at a rally, jumping up and down and pounding his little fists on the ground. Please give me attention. If you don't give me attention, that means you concede. Nobody cares, Stan. Nobody cares. Instead of Dave Rubin doesn't have time to debate you. Instead, you get me, old man, whether you like it or not. But he had a little hissy fit because Scott Adams spoke the truth. Now, Scott Adams was looking at I'll see the links in the video description. Mark Dice did a good video on this. Scott Adams cited, there's a Rasmussen poll where 53% of the respondents said it's not okay to be white. Well, if it's not okay to be white, yeah, that is a hate group. And Scott Adams basically advised people, if you live in a Democrat-run area, like Detroit, most of Baltimore, a lot of Houston, most of Wilmington, Delaware, most of Newark, most of Memphis. There's all kinds of, again, see links in the video description. I totally demolished Sam Seder on black homicide. There's hundreds of cities, some with high homicide rates, some with low, some in red states, some in blue states. Common theme, black on black homicide. And he advised you to get out of that area. So yes, if I had the money that I have and I lived in, say, that dung hole called Minneapolis, I would move out of that dung hole called Minneapolis, and I would get an even better job in, where I'm at now, western rural Iowa, where most people are armed. I'm just speaking from my own experience. Most of the people, I don't have a lot of friends, but I have a lot of acquaintances. And I don't know anybody that doesn't have, of course, Iowa's constitutional carry now. I don't know anybody that doesn't have several firearms. So let me spell this out for you, Stan, you fat little toad. If, let's say, some fatherless BLM terrorists decide to set up a Chaz or a CHOP. I've told you this before. They decide to set up a Chaz or a CHOP. You remember that up in Seattle? It went on for 3 weeks, I think it was. They tried to set that up in western rural Iowa. The sheriff would take care of it in a half an hour. It wouldn't be there for 3 weeks, or the locals probably would, if you get what I mean. So Stan is having a hissy fit that Scott Adams spoke the truth that there's a Democrat, the base of the Democrat Party, their major voting bloc is the most violent demographic in this country. Now, Stan might say, most of those people don't vote. Well, low information voters, people who rarely vote or don't vote at all, are usually Democrats. And it's not like these hood rats in Chicago. It's not like you could go down and have a nuanced conversation with them about Article 1, Section 7 of the Constitution that delegates all spending bills to the House. It's not like, they'd be like, duh, what's that? So, but basically spoke the truth that the most violent constituency in America, it's not white men, it's not Asian men, it's not Asian women, it's not white women, it's not Hispanic women, not even Arab men, certainly not immigrants from the Philippines, it's not immigrants from South Korea, it's young black men. And he said basically, if you live in Baltimore and you can afford to get out of there, get out of there. Because in western rural Iowa, most of Iowa, 66% to 75% of Iowa and their counties have no homicides in any given year. So what you do is you leave that Democrat-run dunghole that has loads of black-on-black homicide for an area that's 90+% white, and you can walk down the streets at any hour of the night because you're not going to get assaulted. And if anybody, in the unlikely event that that would happen, most people probably wouldn't try it because the prey would probably be armed. So it'd be like a sheep in the wolf's den with a shotgun, if you get what I mean. So Stan had a little hissy fit, and now Scott Adams is racist, and Dave Rubin is racist. He spoke the truth. He spoke the truth. The most common form of homicide in America is a black person murdering a black person, and they're less than 14% of the population. All Scott Adams did was speak the truth. Stan, you're not going to move to Wilmington, Delaware. You're an idiot, but I don't blame you for not doing that, but you're not that stupid. You're not going to move to the hood of Newark. You're not going to move to downtown Memphis. You're not going to move to downtown Portland. You're not even that stupid. So it's always been, it's your side. It's your constituents. It's the idiots that would, actually, I don't think a lot of the idiots that would side you would even listen to your show, Stan, which is kind of why Air America failed. Like I said, these idiots, these hood rats that would vote with you, it's not like you're going to have a nuanced conversation, like I said, about the Constitution. They'd be like, duh, who's that? So all they care about is free stuff. All you got to do is say free stuff. So they're not going to even waste their time listening to some fat toad who's never had a real job jabber his mouth on the interwebs for a couple hours every day and then vegetate on Twitter. So Scott Adams spoke the truth. And here's a little data. Again, see the links in the video description. I have so much data I can't even cover. I'd be here for a week. But let's read this off again. And again, if you think it's not okay to be white, that is a hate group. I've had people come up to me and say blacks are inferior. I said, nah, it's a cultural thing. Back in the 40s and 50s, vast majority of black kids had two parents in the home with them. Unfortunately, I'll cover this in a later video. I'm rambling now. If you go back and get CDC data, the black victimization rate for homicide's always been very, very high. Now it's been a lot higher in the past than it is now. But overall, back in the 40s and 50s, most black kids had two parents in the home with them. That's not the case today. I wonder why. Stan, do you think that's maybe why Asians are doing so well? Asian men are out earning you. I identify as Asian. I'm an Asian man, so. Uh-oh, does that mean I'm superior to you? Maybe. Hey, Stan, I got another. I'm doing this from the hip, too. I'm not like Stan where I've got some autistic repeating talking points in my ear. I do have another challenge for you and your autistics. Find me a school district. This just crossed my mind. When I do these homicide essays on these cities that are going down the toilet, and I post their homicide rate, I also go over a lot of school data on graduation rates and dropout rates. So Stan, any one of you or your autistics, find me a school district with an enrollment over 5,000 where blacks are beating whites and Asians in graduation rate or SAT scores. Again, the enrollment has to be 5,000 or more, and you can't just cherry pick. It can't be one where they had 5 people from a demographic take an SAT and say, oh, look at that, they did better. Find me any school district with an enrollment of 5,000 or more where blacks are outperforming whites and Asians. Find me one. You won't. Here's the data. This is the data I am going to read off. Everything else was ad-libbed. I'm going to read this off. The murder/non-negligent manslaughter rate 2020 to 2021 was 6.8 per 100,000. In 2016 to 2019, it was 5.2 per 100,000. Keep in mind, the FBI usually adjusts the previous year total when the current report comes out, so that might change slightly. Now let us look at NIBR's data and find out what percentage of murder victims and offenders where we know the race of the victim were black. From 2016 to 2019, 56.5% of the murder offenders where we know the race of the offender was black. 56.5%. Can you believe that? From 2016 to 2019, of the victims where we know the race of the victim, this is the victims, not the offenders, 51.59% of the victims were black. That's also very disproportionate. From 2020 to 2021, the NIBR's data gives us, it tells us of the murder offenders, where we know the race of the offender, it went up. Now 59.5% of them are black. And from 2020 to 2021, the NIBRS data tells us that 58.5% of the victims were black. So the murder rate per 100,000 was much higher in the latter time frame, 2020 and 2021, than the former time frame, 2016 to 2019. The percentage of murder victims that were black and the offenders that were black increased substantially as well. It appears that despite the whining of carnival barkers like the Divorcee Sam Seder, hashtag Black Lives Matter accomplished what they wanted to accomplish. They created more chaos. They pined for fragmented families because they hate nuclear families, and they use millions of idiots as pawns in their game. You'll also see, and I'm not going to read this off because I'm wrapping this up. Unlike Stan, I actually have a job and things to do, and Twitter's not my job. You'll see that the percentage of murder offenders who were less than 30 years old also went up. That's very disproportionate. And the number of murder victims that were less than 30 years old also went up. So this goes back to what Scott Adams was basically saying. You have a hate group that is responsible for murdering each other. Young black men are killing young black men in droves. And Scott Adams is saying if you are in a city, and it's probably run by Democrats, that has a lot of young black men murdering young black men, you should get out of there. Because you might even be in their crosshairs too. It's not safe to live in Detroit. It's not safe to live in most of Baltimore. Los Angeles is starting to go down the tubes. The Twin Cities are going down the tubes. Portland is down the tubes. Seattle's headed that way. Houston's headed that way. So Scott Adams is right. You have a hate group, basically young black men who are killing young black men in the streets. Kind of reminds me of Islam. There's a lot of Sunni Shia rivalries. Heck, they kill each other more than they kill the infidels. And that's the way it is with these young black men that people like you have stirred up, and people like Maxine Waters have stirred up because she sits in her ivory tower and tells them to do these hideous things. Because she knows in chess the pawns go first. But be careful what you wish for. So yeah, Scott Adams is right. And Stan Seder is just butthurt that someone would dare call out young black men for killing young black men. And that's a voting bloc that belongs to the Democrats. Fortunately, though, black males are slowly moving over to the GOP. Let's hope that continues. Don't thank me now for the slapdown of the divorcee carnival barker Stan Seder.